My name is Octavio Kulesz. I am a digital publisher and a researcher from Argentina. And as a publisher, I have my own company, Teseo. We are producing ebooks for Latin American researchers and students. And as a researcher myself, my main field is digital culture and digital media in developing countries. So in the next few minutes, I will try to describe what are, in my view, the main opportunities and challenges of the digital age as far as cultural industries are concerned. And in general, most discussions about the digital age tend to focus only on one of those two elements, those two components, either opportunities or challenges. And it is very clear that digital technologies constitute a kind of amplifier of trends. So there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. And among challenges, we shouldn't only focus on obstacles, that is to say, barriers that keep us from fully benefiting from the opportunities, but we should also pay attention to the threats, that is to say, new dangers arising from the very digital era. So I would say a few words about the opportunities and then about the challenges, having in mind always the topic of cultural diversity. So many of the elements I will point out now come from my analysis of the periodic reports that have been delivered by the parties to the 2005 UNESCO Convention on the protection and promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions. So, as for the opportunities, it is clear that new technologies imply lower costs and a much easier distribution. So, for instance, for a publisher like me, it has always been very difficult to bring a printed copy from Argentina to Mexico or to Spain or even to the Patagonia in the south of Argentina. And with electronic formats, it's much easier and much cheaper to put that in the hands of a student, for example. And digital technologies also involve new business models, so I can, for example, benefit from what is known as the long tail, this part of the curve of products, in my case of titles, of book titles, that may sell, but in the long run. So cheaper, easier, and new business models. That's not just for the book industry, but also for the music industry, for the film industry, and any other cultural industry in the digital age. Now, what about the obstacles? If we want to put an ebook in the hands of a student in Patagonia or in any other part, well, we will need connectivity. We will need hardware, Kindle, a tablet, a smartphone in the hands of the consumer. And we will need software. So that's the infrastructure problem is really a barrier sometimes because there is a digital gap. This is undeniable. And the second big obstacle, in my view, to fully reap the benefits from the digital era is the lack of know-how among the cultural industries, especially among SMEs, small and medium-sized companies. If I think of the publishing industry again, independent companies, sometimes they lack the necessary skills to convert, for example, their backlist from paper to electronic format, be it EPUB format or app format or any other interactive format. So there is a need for a big change in the way cultural industries gain new skills. So a big effort in terms of training will be needed in the future. So that's for the obstacles, and it's a very, very quick overview. Now, in the discussions about cultural diversity in the digital age, it is not usual to discuss the threats, but there are big threats here, and mostly related to the behavior of the very large platforms, those web giants that have an undeniable impact on the cultural scene nowadays. I'm referring, of course, to companies such as Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and that's only from the West, but we can also add the web giants from Asia, especially from China, such as Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent. And those very big platforms tend to behave in the same way, generally, because they start choosing a single point in the creative chain, depending on their specific profile. So, for example, Google, it's online search, Amazon is sales, Apple is hardware. They start from there, and they then expand towards the sides. That's why most of those companies are not just one link in the chain, but they tend to become the chain itself. So that's why we speak of marketplaces. Android, owned by Google, is not a player. Android is a marketplace. Amazon also is a marketplace. And Apple, the App Store, is a marketplace. So it is very strange when a player becomes the market, because there is a big risk of concentration. And that's how, if we take, for example, the app market, which is probably the most powerful digital market globally, and one of the most integrated digital markets, it's almost controlled by those two companies, Apple and Google, in terms of who owns the marketplaces. So, in my view, this may represent in the future a serious risk for cultural diversity, in that we need not only diversity of supply, that is to say, diversity in the different goods and services available for the consumers, but we also need diversity in the suppliers. Without this second component, cultural diversity may be at risk, because there is a problem of sustainability. And we know that whenever there is a monopoly or an oligopoly, prices tend to rise and supply tend to shrink. So we have to see the movie in the future. That's one of the biggest threats, in my view.